Showers already pushing into parts of western England and Wales, but further east a drier story. A few showers also for western parts of Northern Ireland, but it's down the western side of Scotland where the showers are going to be most frequent, and there could already be some heavy ones as we go through the morning. Eastern parts of Scotland clinging on to some fine sunny weather through a large chunk of the morning, but as we head towards the afternoon, those showers are going to become a bit more widespread. Some of them could be on the heavy side, and there could be the odd rumble of thunder mixed in, albeit they don't look as intense as the showers that we saw yesterday. Plenty of showers for Northern Ireland. Parts of western England and Wales may see a few showers, staying dry towards the east, and a decent amount of sunshine, and with that feeling pretty warm again, temperatures in the mid-20s for some. Looking ahead to Saturday, and after a mostly fine start for many of us, we are going to see the showers developing yet again. Slight differences in where we're most likely to see the showers. Probably Northern England, North Wales could see their heaviest showers on Saturday, and they could be quite slow moving because the winds will be dropping out a little bit. But Sunday into Monday looks drier and warmer. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation. Tonight, the Tory leadership race is underway, and tonight I will be bringing you a full-length interview with Shadow Security Minister Tom Tugendhat. I asked him everything from the ECHR to withdraw from that convention, or lead a Conservative Party campaigning to withdraw from it.
I am willing to do it.
To what to do about Nigel Farage and reform,
Nigel has made his position clear.
But I'm asking your position. Would you want him in?
Look, I think Nigel has made his position clear.
To the future of the Tory party.
We've got to rebuild, frankly. This is where what we've got to do is we've got to own the mistakes that we made.
That's all coming up shortly. Plus, we will be discussing Labour's new energy plans that will cost you more than £8 billion. We'll also be speaking to a local resident of Weatherfield amidst the news that the RAF base turned migrant accommodation centre is set to become a mega prison. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most intellectual panel, Conservative peer and journalist Paul Lord Goodman, and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. As ever, I want to hear your views, particularly on the Conservative leadership, so mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Polly Middlehurst.
Jacob, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is that the police watchdog says investigators will be examining hours of body-worn video and CCTV footage following an altercation which has resulted in a police officer being suspended from duty. Greater Manchester Police say they were called to reports of an assault in the airport car park where they were punched to the ground and a female police officer's nose was broken. After that, police are shown on a video circulating online subduing the arrested men forcefully, including using a kick to the head. A solicitor representing the two men involved says they're family members of a Greater Manchester police officer, and he says the family are traumatised by what happened. In other news, a man charged with attempted murder after the stabbing of a uniformed army officer in Kent has been remanded in custody for his own welfare. 24-year-old Anthony Essan was arrested near his home in Rochester just 30 minutes after the violent attack, which left a uniformed army officer with multiple stab wounds. Essan was also charged with possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. He'll be back in court next month. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton remains in a serious but stable condition in hospital after the stabbing near Brompton Barracks in Gillingham on Tuesday evening. The former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick will stand for the leadership of the Conservative Party, promising to win back voters who switched to Reform UK. He's the third Tory to go for the top job after James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. Mr Cleverly says he's best placed to unite the party after the Tory election defeat. But Tom Tugendhat says the Conservatives have lost the trust of the British people after failing to deliver lower taxes and lower migration.
You've seen what's just happened in the recent election. We lost the trust of the British people because we failed to deliver. And I've got a track record of delivery, whether that's in the army on operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, or whether that's in Parliament standing up to those who would threaten us, those authoritarian dictators. And that's got me sanctioned by countries like China and Russia and Iran. And, of course, I've been delivering in government, as the security minister, making sure that we are safe. And I can't talk about all the areas that I've been working on as security minister for obvious reasons, but absolutely prioritising the interests and security of the British people is exactly what I've done.
Tom Tugendhat and, of course, Jacob Rees-Mogg speaking to Tom Tugendhat in the programme following this bulletin. Just lastly, the Prime Minister says offshore wind will soon power 20 million British homes as he launched the new state-owned GB Energy company, speaking during a visit to an engineering plant in the northwest of England. Sir Keir Starmer said the firm's partnership with the Crown Estate would help turbocharge Britain's transition to clean energy.
Now there is a massive prize within our reach. And make no mistake, the race is on to get there. Until now, I feel like we've been sort of tying up our laces in the changing room. No more. I don't just want to be in the race for clean energy. I want us to win the race for clean energy. And why not? We've got the potential, we've got the ports, we've got the people, the skills, and now we've got a mission-driven government.
The Prime Minister speaking earlier on today. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. In place of a monologue today, I've got a particularly interesting guest. I've got an interview with Tom Tugendhat. Tom has been an MP since 2015, has been a minister, a soldier, and has now thrown his hat in the ring to be leader of the Conservative Party and, he hopes, Prime Minister. Tom, welcome to GB News. You've thrown your hat into the ring. You've written an article for The Telegraph. What is your vision for the Conservative Party?
Well, Jacob, my vision for the Conservative Party is one that I think we all share, which is to be conservative again. And frankly, we failed. Let's be honest with ourselves. The last few years, we failed to deliver. We failed to achieve the aims that you and I championed as much as we could in Parliament and in government at different points, and we failed to do things like bring migrant numbers down, bring taxes down, and deliver that conservative agenda that we know makes this country prosper. And my vision is that we should actually deliver. Now, I've got a track record of doing that, as you know, delivering on operations in Afghanistan and Iraq as a soldier, delivering in Parliament, changing the policy, as you know, on China, on Russia and on Iran, which, as you also know, got me sanctioned for the privilege, and then most recently as a minister, changing.
In your piece in The Telegraph, you emphasised trust.
Yeah.
And that we broke trust with the British people because we didn't do what we said we would do. But you and I were both part of that breach of trust. Why should people trust us in future when we've been central to the governments that have just broken that trust?
Well, this is where we've got to rebuild, frankly. This is where what we've got to do is we've got to own the mistakes that we made. We've got to be open and honest with those areas where we got it wrong. And we've got to listen to the British people very clearly and be ready to make the changes that we need to make. Because this country needs, I think, it needs a Conservative Party. It needs a party arguing for those centre-right values that make individuals safe, secure and prosperous in years to come.
And you want to unite the party, and you said that the party has certain views that it holds in common, and that, for example, Tories know what a woman is. But there are some members of the parliamentary party who don't. What do you do about them?
Well, I think all those who are running do, as far as I know.
But there are members of the parliamentary party who have been very unclear, people like Caroline Noakes, about what a woman is. Are you going to follow, or would you follow, Sir Keir Starmer's approach and take the whip away from people who weren't in with the division lobbies with you on these sorts of things? Is that how you would unite the party, or do you think people will come round to your way of thinking?
Well, I think most people will come round. And in fact, most people already share it. And what Keir Starmer has done is he's removed the whip only when people voted against a particular policy. In fact, he's already lost, I think it's 7 members of his team because of the vote the other day. But look, leadership is about choices. It is about making decisions on things that matter. And I think being clear, whether it be on areas like that and children's rights and protecting children, or whether it's about standing up for the UK in the world as it gets more dangerous, I think you need to be absolutely clear what the principles are that you're abiding by. And for me, it's pretty simple. It's what is in the interest of the British people? That has got to be the focus.
Coming to the interest of the British people, one of the issues that has been central to your campaign and the commentary on it is the question of the European Convention on Human Rights. Are you willing to withdraw from that convention or lead a Conservative Party campaigning to withdraw from it?
I am willing to do it. Of course I'm willing to do it. What I want to do is I want to see the policies that I was talking about since 2013 implemented. Since 2013, I've been talking about derogating in time of war, something that I know we've discussed, and I wrote a paper, in fact, I wrote 2 papers about this for Policy Exchange way back then on the fog of law and clearing the fog of law. And we need to be absolutely clear that the purpose of these institutions is to serve the interests of the British people. You know, when our predecessors on the Conservative benches passed these bills and signed these treaties in the 1950s, they were doing it to extend the prosperity and security of the British people. That's exactly why they did it. And that's what the purpose of these treaties is. Now, if they continue to deliver that, fantastic. We should support them. If they cease to deliver that, we should either reform or derogate or possibly leave.
OK. But what you're saying is if and if. But that haven't we seen enough of them not delivering, of us being unable to remove undesirables from this country, of them having an effect on British political life that overrides the sovereign will of Parliament?
So I think there are areas here which we haven't tried, and actually I think it's quite clear that if you look at the areas where we could derogate and haven't, you can see many areas where we simply haven't tried. And I would really like to see us delivering on those areas, because there are many things that we need to make sure we're in the right place for. And these aren't simple answers, as you know very well. These are complicated answers, and the reason they're complicated is because they bring in other treaties, they bring in other promises that we've made. So we've got to do this in an organised way. And the first thing we've got to do is to try and make the system work. And if it doesn't, then we have to make the decisions that are consequent.
But didn't Ken Clarke actually have a go at trying to make the system work when David Cameron was Prime Minister and got basically nowhere?
Well, very slightly, I would argue. I don't think he had a full attempt to make it work. I don't think we derogated from various aspects of the right to a family life. I don't think there's various aspects that we derogated from in different aspects of the ECHR. And there are options here. The truth is, as well, as you know, that the perception of our European partners has changed. You don't need me to tell you this. Just look at the pressures on the Irish government or the French government or the Spanish government or the Italian government, and you see that they too are in a different position today.
Tom, aren't you giving a very politician's answer on this? That you are saying, well, I may do this and I may do that. You're very unwilling to be pinned down to say, look, these are the circumstances under which I would campaign to leave, and I would ask Parliament to legislate to leave. And that's the clarity people are looking for.
Jacob, let me give you that clarity, because I think it's important. The clarity is that if this fails to reform, if it fails to work, if the derogation fails to allow us to protect the British people, then we must leave.
One of the areas where you recognise that we failed as a government is in mass migration. And it was 1.4 million net in the 2 years to June 2023. It was really off the scale.
Yeah.
This was legal.
This is nothing to do with ECHR.
That's right. Yeah. That's absolutely right. Under our control, we failed. What level of legal migration would you like to see?
Well, what I'd like to see is I'd like to see British businesses paying enough wages to British workers so that we don't need to import cheap labour from around the world. Now, there are several reasons for that. One is the level of change that we're seeing in our communities. You don't need me to tell you that. You see it around the United Kingdom. But the second reason is actually the nature of demography around the world has changed. This is an older planet. This is a planet with fewer young people, and the competition for young people is going to get greater. We need to be much, much better at supporting our own economy, and that's where we need to see productivity changes. We need to see the sort of economic changes that you and I have spoken about to make sure that we are getting the workers from the UK to support businesses in the UK and getting the productivity changes where it's needed to make sure that they can work.
And immigration has also had a cultural effect as well as an economic effect. Do you think multiculturalism has been, on the whole, good for the United Kingdom, or has had damaging effect on communities?
Well, I think that having different cultures able to work together is one of the great joys of the United Kingdom.
Yes, but do they work together?
Well, it depends. It depends. You know, I have served in the armed forces with people from all faiths and none. I've worked together with people from many different cultures who have contributed with huge dignity and honour in our army, navy and air force. And, you know, there are people around the world, people around the United Kingdom who have really added to our national life in many different ways. Sadly, there are others who haven't. And as you know, as Security Minister, I was extremely clear with those who decided to, for example, side with Hamas after the recent attacks in Israel and Gaza, that if they choose to side with those who are hostile to Britain's interests, then they must leave the country. And I had no compunction in removing visas from those who did.
The leading campaigner on immigration in this country for some years has been Nigel Farage. Would you welcome him and, more importantly, his supporters into the Conservative Party? And if so, how?
Well, look, I think Nigel has made plain his view on the Conservative Party, but I do welcome his supporters in, because what we need to be doing is bringing Conservatives together. We've seen Conservatives divided, and the recent election has just effectively given the Labour Party a massive majority without a mandate.
If Nigel said he would like to come in, would you welcome him, or would you say, no?
Look, I think Nigel has made his position clear.
But I'm asking your position. Would you want him in?
Look, I think Nigel has made his position clear. What I would want him to do is to champion Conservative views, and I haven't heard him doing that in favour of the Conservative Party for a little while. He's championed some Conservative views, but very much in terms of other parties. He needs to champion the Conservative Party, as you know.
As well as Conservative views. And taxation and the size of the state. In my view, the state is too big. We should be aiming to get public expenditure down to 35% of GDP. Is that a realistic target?
In one parliament, I'm afraid no, it's not. Let's be frank, it's not. But we need to be aiming in that direction. And that's where, what we have seen, and, I'm not going to argue for a second that we kept taxes down enough in the last government. We certainly didn't. But we tried to in various areas. And what you can see already with the King's Speech is the Labour Party has no intention of trying to. In fact, it's going directly in the reverse. And we need to make sure that in the short term we're holding to account, and in the long term we're setting out the agenda for change. And that means, being clear about the productivity changes. It means being clear about the different ways in which we should expect individuals to play their part in society, as well as the state to play its role, so that we have that aim.
Doesn't it also mean cheap energy? And in your article, The Telegraph, you mentioned nuclear power.
Yeah.
But actually, we need cheap fossil fuels, and this green ideology that is making our electricity prices double those in the United States is having a really damaging effect on our productivity and therefore on our economic growth.
Well, it means two things, actually, because effectively there's three things we want to do with energy. The first is we want energy prices to come down, and we all know what the impact of high energy prices was on families after Ukraine. The second thing we want to do is we want energy security. We don't want to be dependent on Russia or other countries that could effectively toy with us on energy production. And the third thing we want to do is, yes, of course we want a greener future. Of course we want to be as carbon efficient as we can be.
We want to be energy efficient because that's economically sensible.
Right.
But is it right to be fussing about carbon rather than economic prosperity?
It is right to be making sure we keep the three in balance. And that's why the changes that we've made in bringing in more carbon-efficient production here in the United Kingdom by having more gas production, for example, is so important. And by the way, drilling our own oil in the North Sea is more carbon efficient than bringing it in from anywhere else. And those areas we need to continue.
So do you think net zero in 2050 is realistic? No. Or we should start pushing that back?
It's not realistic. I mean, if you can show me the science that delivers it, I'll be fascinated, because I've never seen it. All I've seen is that as an aspiration. But I do believe that nuclear is an essential part of that. And, you can look at countries like France that have got 70-80% of their production from nuclear power. And they are much more carbon efficient than countries like Germany, Poland, which have still got coal, or indeed China, of course, which is still building coal power farms.
Foreign affairs is your great area of expertise and your great interest. Are we effectively in a Cold War with China?
It certainly feels like that at times. And the reality is, the point about foreign affairs is it's not about foreigners. It's about us. It's about how do we keep the British people safe? How do we keep ourselves prosperous? How do we make sure that we have the freedoms and rights that we have had for the last 70, 80 years and intend to enjoy for years to come? And I'm afraid what China is doing is really threatening that. And you can see that in the way that we've seen, I'm afraid, industrial espionage and different forms of influence here in the United Kingdom, sometimes through universities, sometimes through that consulate in Manchester, for example. We've seen different forms of pressure on us. But there's much more than that. It's actually about being honest with the types of jobs that are moving to China as well. I mean, this is why I find, frankly, Ed Miliband's ideological obsession with net zero bizarre. What he's doing is he's pushing British jobs to Beijing, where they are, or rather to the whole of China, where many of them are effectively being outsourced for green reasons to power stations, fired by coal. It makes absolutely no sense.
The one thing I want to finish on is the one area where, as leader of the opposition, you have control. That's the structures of the Conservative Party. Some of the candidates, including actually the former party chairman, were essentially imposed on constituencies, causing huge upset to local members. Are you in favour of reinvigorating local democracy within the Conservative Party, reform of central office, and how would you do it?
Look, I absolutely, and frankly, as a party that preaches competition and freedom, sometimes it appears that we're more Stalinist than Thatcherite, and that's simply not right. I mean, it's just not right. And it's not right for many reasons. One, it disempowers our members, and our members are not just the lifeblood of our party, but they are actually the energy behind the ideas and the opportunities that we're building as a country. And the second reason is we don't get the competition. So we don't always get the best candidates. Sometimes we get some brilliant candidates, of course we do. But sometimes we get people who are not always competed openly with, perhaps is a polite way of putting it.
Would you have an elected party chairman, which some of the democracy campaigners within the Conservative Party have asked for?
I'm looking at ideas on this, and I haven't come to a firm view on that. And the reason I haven't is because I think we do need a greater role for the elected and the representative element of the members. The question about an elected party chairman is slightly different. The reason I say that is because we should elect the leader, and we have one leader. We shouldn't have two poles of influence. So I think having a greater voice for the chair of the voluntary party may be a way of doing that, rather than having an elected chairman.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. We're going to be discussing this. We're going to be examining every answer that Tom Tugendhat has given shortly. Wait for that.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Anton du Beke, and even I know that's a big name, has become the latest Strictly Come Dancing pro to come under some sort of fire amid the show's misconduct probe.
Yeah, his former partner, Layla Ruiz, told her lawyers that du Beke made offensive comments to her back in 2009.
Which you have to accept is quite a while ago, but it's almost as though things are building. He has since apologised, and she has accepted the apology. But what on earth is absolutely going on inside Strictly Come Dancing?
I have to say it has been a strictly witch hunt this week because, you know, it's been like the snowball effect. You know, a couple of months ago we had Amanda Abbington who came out with accusations against Giovanni Panice.
Now, I don't even know who she is. Who is she?
So she's an actress. She's been on there she is. She left the show early because she said due to personal distress. She now then came out and said actually working with Giovanni Panice caused her PSTD. Another dancer, Graziano Di Prima, who's now left because there was videos that had surfaced that apparently he was physically abusive towards his partner Zara McDermott, who this week actually came up with her side of the story and said that actually during training sessions she was kicked by him and physically abused by him. So he's now left the show.
Is this a case of celebrities being snowflakes, or is there something in this? Is this something more sinister?
You know, Martin, there's always two sides to a story, and the dancers are coming from that point of view where they say it's because we want to win. But when you're a celebrity who might not have much dancing experience, you think about the glitz and the glamour of Strictly, but what we're hearing now is a lot of celebrities over the years have said, I've been left with PSTD. I was physically abused when I was on Strictly, verbally abused. And so now we're getting all the other sides to what actually celebrities are saying they're experiencing.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. We brought you our first interview for the next Tory leadership election with the Shadow Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat, and the mail logs have come in. Brian says, will members be involved? If so, will their selection be acceptable this time? And yes, members will be involved. Carol, I've watched this impressive MP for some time, should have been leader long before, an ex-military man, good speaker, sensible, and looks and sounds the part. And Alan says, I don't think there's anyone who can change the Tory fortune. Most of those elected could easily be in the Lib Dems or Labour. So what do the Conservatives actually stand for? Well, we covered a good deal of ground with the Tory leader candidate Tom Tugendhat, and joining me now to evaluate his chances is my panel, Conservative peer and journalist Paul Goodman and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Nigel, if I can come to you first, how frightened of Tom Tugendhat would the Labour Party be? Would they think that he was a really capable answer to Keir Starmer?
I think they'd probably be more frightened of James Cleverly, in fact, rather than Tom. I mean, at the moment, the way this leadership thing seems to be operating, I know we're in very early days yet, is it's not actually who MPs want to be the leader, but which MP to vote for to stop other people becoming the leader. And so suddenly Priti Patel seems to have come into the frame as being one of the favourites on the basis that the argument is that a vote for her would keep out Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick.
But Tom is extremely articulate.
Yep.
He's got a very good background.
He's my MP.
He's your MP, well, that qualification in itself. And he's very knowledgeable. I mean, his answers are all very well thought through.
Yeah, what I'm most disappointed about, which I'm also surprised about, is his attitude to ECHR. I mean, he said in the past that we shouldn't leave ECHR on the basis it would undermine the Good Friday Agreement. And when he talks about trust, it seems to me that having said that in one breath to then turn around and talk about leaving ECHR is not a very good way of actually inspiring trust.
Paul, is he too sensible? Is there not enough red meat in what he's saying to throw to the members who are looking for somebody who can draw voters back from reform?
So, first of all, it's probably worth me saying, since I'm a Conservative peer and will have a vote at some point, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not committed to any candidate. And I'm kind of weighing them all up and could imagine voting for any of them. I thought he gave, as you just indicated just now, a very good, clear, clean interview because he can think, he can speak, and he does, more or less, answer the questions and have a view on everything. I think Labour would regard him as a quite difficult opponent because although on the one hand, all Tories have this trust problem, which you zoned in very accurately on the interview, he's got this soldierly aspect to him, and Conservatives like soldiers, and lots of voters like soldiers, and all the stuff he said about what he'd done in Afghanistan and Iraq, etc., is all true.
But do people think of Keir Starmer saying he's the son of a toolmaker? Do people get bored with people saying what they've done, or do you think that this remains...
They get very bored of people saying what they've done, and in fact, Tom Tugendhat made a joke of it in the last leadership election. He kept saying, as you all know by now, I was a soldier. But you have to repeat these things again and again and again until people get the point. And it's important in this context because lots of people don't know who any of these people are. The Conservatives have only got 121 MPs, and you're going to have to, as it were, shout very loudly to be heard.
And Nigel was saying that he was disappointed by the answer on the ECHR. Do you think he said enough to satisfy the members of the party?
He gave good answers. I think as he goes on, they'll get better. And I was surprised he didn't say, look, on the ECHR, I've got a plan, and it's basically the same plan we applied during Brexit, which is try to get it changed, and if we can't get it changed, then leave. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And he would, I suppose, go on to say, and lots of our neighbours have got an interest in getting it changed.
Which he
did touch on, yeah.
And Nigel, one thing you feel strongly about are the green issues. And Tom was saying that net zero in 2050 isn't going to happen, it's unrealistic. Is that a useful point of difference between this government and a potential successor?
Well, certainly it's a point of difference. I'm not sure he's right. I mean, we've actually signed up to the idea of net zero in 2050. We're heading that way. That targets that were watered down by the Tories in the last government are now being reintroduced by Labour. Assuming we get clean energy by 2030, we should be on track for net zero in 2050.
But is he right that it's simply not realistic that this isn't going to...
I mean, this is what it depends whether you believe in net zero or not. I think it's realistic that having committed to that, it depends which scientists you talk to, of course, but I think it is realistic, and we should go hell for leather to actually get to net zero.
And Paul, his economic policy, I mean, he thinks the state's too big. I mean, I would have liked to have had an hour-long conversation with him, because inevitably one starts something but doesn't get details.
This is a very difficult conversation for any of the candidates, because you have to look at the big picture, which is demographic challenges, ageing population, lots of money going on health and pensions, everything else being squeezed. What are you going to do? And he didn't really get to the heart of that. By the way, I was surprised that in his very strong article in The Telegraph this morning, he didn't mention at all what is one of the key three areas for the Conservative Party. One, economic competence. Two, controlling immigration. The third is the NHS. And he didn't mention that in The Telegraph this morning. Actually, didn't come up in the interview either directly.
And Nigel, Labour, Keir Starmer, has managed to restore sufficient trust to be elected. Do you think Tom is somebody who is capable of restoring trust, or do you think it's impossible for the Tories in the short term after 14 years of government?
I'm not necessarily sure it has to be Tom, but I do think the Tories could come back in 5 years. This has been the weirdest election I've certainly ever seen. So on the basis of that, there's no such thing as a safe seat. People stayed at home, and that turned on its head the idea that people were happy with what was going on, which is what happened in 2001, or what we thought happened. So on the basis of that, there's no reason why, if there's no such thing as a safe seat, you could overturn the Labour majority in 5 years' time.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much to my panel. We will be discussing Tory leadership all the way through to November. Coming up, we'll be talking about Labour and its new energy plan that will cost you more than £8 billion.
Good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. There's likely to be something a bit drier and warmer early next week, but before then, plenty of showers. And actually, through the end of today, there is still some more persistent rain affecting some parts of the southeast due to a waving frontal system that's already brought quite a bit of rain. That rain in the far southeast should clear through as we go through the next few hours, though. And so for many, it is going to be a largely dry night, just a scattering of showers continuing across western parts of Scotland in particular, also parts of Northern Ireland and northwest England. Many places, though, having some clear skies, and it may be a touch fresher than last night towards the northwest, still quite warm and muggy towards the southeast. And as we go through tomorrow morning, then a bright start for many. Maybe the odd pocket of mist and fog around, but I think on the whole it's largely dry. A few showers already pushing into parts of western England and Wales, but further east a drier story. A few showers also for western parts of Northern Ireland, but it's down the western side of Scotland where the showers are going to be most frequent, and there could already be some heavy ones as we go through the morning. Eastern parts of Scotland clinging on to some fine sunny weather through a large chunk of the morning, but as we head towards the afternoon, those showers are going to become a bit more widespread. Some of them could be on the heavy side, and there could be the odd rumble of thunder mixed in, albeit they don't look as intense as the showers that we saw yesterday. Plenty of showers for Northern Ireland. Parts of western England and Wales may see a few showers, staying dry towards the east, and a decent amount of sunshine, and with that feeling pretty warm again, temperatures in the mid-20s for some. Looking ahead to Saturday, and after a mostly fine start for many of us, we are going to see the showers developing yet again. Slight differences in where we're most likely to see the showers. Probably Northern England, North Wales could see the heaviest showers on Saturday, and they could be quite slow moving because the winds will be dropping out a little bit. But Sunday into Monday looks drier and warmer. Bye-bye.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christies. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have said stump.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different.
Patrick Christies tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We were talking about the Tory leadership race, and your views have been coming in. Mac says, Mac, thank you very much. Bravo, Sir Jacob, challenging Tugendhat on the ECHR. No direct answer. Okay, surprise. And Oliver says the Tories are too divided. But is Labour any better? I remember from 1979, if Labour's the answer, it must have been a silly question. Anyway, John says the members want Suella, but the party doesn't. I would say the members and the party are the same thing, but I think the MPs may not be that keen. The long-awaited and much-trailed new state-owned energy company was launched today by the Prime Minister, but not before he was reminded by those present that his dad did for a living.
And this is something the media will know. I said it many times in the election campaign. My dad was a tool maker, and he worked particularly with steel, as you do in tool making of the sort that he was doing.
After that, the Prime Minister got to the point and explained what this new agency will be responsible for.
A publicly owned energy company making money for the taxpayer, creating the next generation of good jobs, and taking Putin's boot off our throat once and for all, and doing our duty to the planet and to the next generation.
So far, the only details we have is that GB Energy will enter a partnership with the Crown Estate and to use the British seabed for offshore wind farms. The taxpayer will provide GB Energy with £8.3 billion of funding, and the hope is that the company will then attract a further £60 billion of private investment. Well, I'm joined now by the Director of Energy and Environment at Public First, Sam Alvis. Sam, thank you very much for joining me. What do you understand GB Energy will do?
So GB Energy is looking to do two things. The first is to work alongside the private sector, crowd in that private energy company money to increase the rate that we are building new, clean energy generation in the UK, for example, in offshore wind. And it is also looking to communities to say, actually, some smaller scale generation, whether that's rooftop solar, whether that's onshore wind turbines, helping you create and own those in your local area, also hoping to reduce your bills.
But the history of public subsidy for enterprise isn't very successful in this country. It's tended to lose more money than it's made. Why should this be any different?
So what we're not looking at here is a direct subsidy to the private sector. We are looking at the state working alongside the private sector. So yes, the state has promised to bring some low-cost capital to help reduce the price of constructing those energy generating investments, but it's also said it will do other things. So it will help with the burdensome planning regulations that the private sector currently has to deal with. It is bringing other attributes to working alongside in partnership rather than just providing money to private developers to profit from.
But sorting out the planning system is clearly a very good thing to do and a major part of this government's programme. But won't it have to offer guaranteed returns on energy projects? And isn't that where there's the risk to consumers that they'll have to pay higher bills? And we've seen that with some of the guaranteed returns on nuclear and wind farms already.
So renewable generation already goes through what's called the contracts for difference scheme. This is a competitive auction where renewable projects bid against each other at the lowest possible price. And what we've seen is that scheme has paid back into the Exchequer over the last few years. It's a hugely valuable scheme to bring on cheap, clean, new generation. What GB Energy is going to do is help get those projects up and running, but then they will go through that competitive process to ensure they're delivering the best value for the taxpayer.
But those competitive processes have led us with energy prices, electricity prices that are double those in the United States. So they've actually been, I mean, some of the early ones for solar have been extraordinarily profitable and have led to higher prices for consumers.
The thing that we've seen over the last 3 years when energy prices have gone up is really that's because the price of gas has gone up significantly due to the war in Ukraine. And what this Labour government is attempting to do is say, actually, we don't need gas anymore. Gas is costing us a huge amount. It's costing bill payers a huge amount. If we are incentivising that clean, homegrown, renewable energy, then that prevents us being exposed to those volatile gas markets, which we know puts up the cost of energy over the last few years.
OK, well, thank you very much, Sam. I'm now joined by my panel, Conservative peer and journalist Paul Goodman and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Nigel, is this the British Leyland of energy?
Well, let's hope not. And no reason why it should be. I mean, the whole thing, the investment going into it seems to be reasonable to try and attract the private investors along. If it works, we end up with clean electricity by 2030. Now, we won't see an immediate reduction in bills. It's going to take at least 5 years to actually build these wind farms. The normal range is about 10 to 15 years. Labour reckon they can get that down to 5 years. So by the next election, we should see some kind of return on what we're actually doing now.
But actually, this is going to get very expensive energy, isn't it? That gas is plentiful and is cheap. We've got lots of it still available to us if we got on with a bit of fracking. And that this is just a way of maintaining a lack of competitiveness in the UK.
Well, you need to know what's the subsidy, what's the product, on what's the result. And by the subsidy, I also mean, how much will the consumers have to pay? And that's the question. Tom Tugendhat gave a rather good answer on this. He said you're trying to do three things: energy security, lower emissions, reasonable bills. And it really depends, in my view, what you're going to get out of it. I'm a sceptic, as you are, about the politics of subsidies and targets rather than incentives.
And the 60 billion investment that it hopes to attract will be dependent on the prices that are offered. And one of the recent rounds of contracts for difference, nobody bid for because the prices weren't high enough.
That was specifically in relation to wind, wasn't
that's
it?
Right,
That's right. Yes,
I
saw that. On the other hand, the gentleman from Public First was saying recently it's worked quite well. And just, you fall back in a case like this where you don't know how much money is coming in and you don't know what the cost is going to be, on your basic view of how politics and the economy should work. And I, like you, am suspicious of subsidies and targets.
And Nigel, this is what I'd come back to, is that we tried all this type of approach in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and it was disastrous. The government trying to run the economy and decide where investment goes leads to the misallocation of capital and businesses that don't actually work and need constantly to be propped up.
But that's like saying that British Rail was actually not a very good way of travelling, and therefore we shouldn't renationalise the railways.
Yes, indeed. I would say exactly that too.
Well, yes,
British Rail was terrible.
Just because of what happened in the past doesn't mean that that's going to happen again in the future.
Why? What's different about government? What makes this batch of civil servants, this generation of civil servants, better at running business than in the 1970s?
Well, you're not running business, are you? What you're doing is you're setting up an investment vehicle, which is GB Energy, to try and bring private investment in and therefore private expertise. The biggest problem I'd have thought they're going to hit, and this will apply in other areas too, is the planning reform. That is going to be the most difficult thing the Labour government will have to get through.
Of course, you should be doing, and as you all credit to me, they are trying to do bits of it. I'm not wholly convinced by what they're trying to do something about the planning system. And, as you know, you're in a government that did try to do something about it and got knocked off course.
And got nowhere. All right, well, thank you very much to Nigel and Paul. Later, I will be speaking to a local resident of Wethersfield amidst the news that the RAF base is set to become a mega prison.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Your mother's story is, if you don't mind me saying, quite tragic. It touched me when I was reading it this morning, Myra, because she has now passed away and she hasn't been here to see kind of justice served, has she?
That's correct. She she died not knowing that she was correct, that Horizon was a flawed system.
And Myra, when you saw, I don't know whether you saw much of Sir Ed Davey during the election campaign, going down water slides, bungee jumping and bouncing around on sort of inflatables. Knowing that he played such a significant role in that difficult period of time with your mum, how did you react to those images?
I'm of the opinion that basically they're all as culpable as each other over all of the years. So I think basically every party had its failings. We knew Horizon was wrong, but nobody would believe us. Even the Postmasters Federation didn't help. They ended up speaking to my mother like she was a thief.
Are you still angry? And what do you want to see from Sir Ed Davey today?
Angry, yes, very angry. I've been furious throughout. Sir Ed Davey today, I know he will apologise. He's already done it. If he means what he says, he'll carry on campaigning to try and get proper redress from the compensation schemes from the thousands of us who still don't have our money. He was made an offer. The £70,000 that went missing, that they stole from us, they offered me 50 because that's all they could find in their records.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
We weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
A brilliant mail mog for you from Robert. Why has Starmer called it GB Energy? Why not Labour Energy or Starmer's Electricity and Tools? I think that's a heroic suggestion. The ex-RAF base, Wethersfield, currently being used to house asylum seekers, has been proposed as the new site for Labour's mega prison to help tackle the overcrowding of our prisons. Labour said during its election campaign it would shut down the migrant camp as part of its overhaul of the asylum system. By moving the 500 currently housed migrants, Labour hopes to accommodate at least 1,700 prisoners instead. The Lord Chancellor, Shabina Mahmood, has promised to fast-track prison building and streamline the planning system to cope with the inevitable rise in jail population. Well, I'm joined now by a Wethersfield resident, Dave Price. Oh, Mr. Price, thank you very much for joining me. Are you enthusiastic about having a prison rather than an asylum centre?
I'm not really enthusiastic at all. I guess you won't be surprised. What I'm really concerned about, here we go again, civil servants thinking they know best. We'll stick a prison up there instead. You know, we advised them of a lot of issues up at that site, and they just ignored it.
What's wrong with the site?
What's wrong with the site? Its location. It's 6 to 7 miles away from the nearest decent A-class road. Same for a railway station. The roads feeding the site are quite poor quality in terms of, you know, just hazardous in many ways, lots of blind bends on it. The thought of the hundreds, if not thousands of truckloads of equipment and goods required to build a prison. The electricity supply up there is very poor. That's why they had to install generators. The water system is poor, not only in terms of pressure, but the actual links up the local sewage farm are broken. So there's a lot
those are points that can be dealt with. You can obviously improve the sewage plant, you can improve the water pressure, you can put in a new electricity substation. I thought the greatest difficulty is the road network, that if you're taking dangerous criminals, you don't want to make it easy for people to spring them out of the control of the police.
I think the reality is the practical issues, and also to be quite honest with you, it's just quite unworkable in many of our opinion. It's going to take a lot more money, whatever they come up with. You know, originally for the asylum centre they were talking about £5 million. Now it's close to £50 million. Anyway, I want to see the evidence base that they have, because you know you're familiar with the evidence base in finance. You don't just stick your finger up in the air, you know, wet it and see what wind the direction's coming in. You want good evidence as to what's the best way forward. Bottom line is,
what would you like done with the site?
I think it should be returned back to the local community from whence it was requisitioned from in the Second World War. But, you know, the reality is community sentencing costs about 10% of our actual prison sentence, far more effective in terms of reducing reoffending. So in terms of good value for money, and I'm sure we all agree the government at times, whatever nature they are not very good at providing good value for money.
Well, yeah, we know that only too well. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And I'm now rejoined by my panel, Conservative peer and journalist Paul Goodman and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Do you think they're just being NIMBYs around this area, or actually this is not the right place for a prison?
I've no idea about whether it's the right place or the wrong place because I haven't seen it, but I do know how all this works, which is if you're Dave's MP, Dave comes to you and says, support us in opposing this, you will do it.
Well, if
James Cleverly. If you quite, and if you didn't...
James Cleverly was Home Secretary.
He was, and if you didn't, you would have the Liberal Democrats on your back and the opposition back, and that's the way it works. But here's the thing, the prisons, sooner or later, have got to go somewhere, unless we're going to be like Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, throw them all open. And in that famous scene in The Dark Knight Rises, they all come out in orange jumpsuits, waving machine guns, while Bane is saying, Gotham is yours, do as you please. Now, unless you're seriously going to do that, you're going to need more prison capacity.
And it's got to be built somewhere.
And it's got to be built somewhere, even if you believe, as the government does, and some Conservatives do, that you have to let some people out who are already in.
But I quite like Dave mentioning effectively Critchell Down and saying that this should be returned to the people from whom it was taken, and that the state, when it takes things, even if it's in the Second World War, doesn't have the right just hang on to them if it feels like it.
I think both of you have got the number of the issue. If you need new prisons, then we'll need 20,000 new spaces by 2028 on current trends. Where are you going to put it? It's got to go somewhere. You've got a site already. It's being used for asylum seekers. If the backlog goes, we can get rid of the asylum seekers, put a prison there.
And the heart of it is planning, because the cost of each new prison cell is, as I understand it, £600,000, which is mainly a planning issue. You think that is much more than building a new house costs.
Yeah,
this is crazy.
But this is what I was saying earlier, where I think that this government's biggest challenge is going to be changing planning regulations to try and get things in. I mean, Dave was actually wasn't terribly militant about what he was saying. No. I'll bet you when somebody else finds there's a prison around the corner from them, that the local objections will be much more vociferous.
No, Dave was actually perfectly reasonable about it, though I thought most of the problems could be overcome. I mean, you can widen roads and so on.
Interesting phenomena is, I wonder how many people who actually live near a prison now that's already there are up in arms about it. I live fairly near a prison, and I'm not aware of residents charging up and down the streets demanding it be closed down and moved elsewhere.
Well, people are always concerned about change, aren't they, rather than...
Of course, and that's human nature, but we're back to this issue of planning and delivery, and although it sounds very attractive to just turn everything back to the community and go back to day one, ultimately the state has got to do some infrastructure stuff.
But isn't this a real challenge for the government, that actually to show sense of purpose, if they've got a site and they've got a planning reform, they need to have that prison built within 2 years?
Yes, I think that's absolutely right, yeah.
And if they do that, it'll actually be rather exciting, and people like me, who are going to be their opponents, will be rather impressed.
Yes, but the trouble is the local people will still be very angry
and
about
you'll probably find it's often in seats that voted Conservative, because they'll be listening more to Labour MPs inevitably.
Well, it's rather like your lot to actually put things in Labour seats.
Surely not. We'd never do anything like that. Anyway, thank you to my most intellectual panel. Up next, it's Patrick Christies. Patrick, what's on your bill of fare this evening?
Heck of a lot, Jacob. So we've got exclusive recording of Anjem Chowdhury, the vile Islamist, making some astonishing comments about Prince Harry that we're going to be bringing to you. Also, what does it say about British society that the allegation of Islamophobia at that incident at Manchester Airport has completely distracted from an army officer being stabbed in broad daylight? And just on that as well, why hasn't anyone been charged for this airport incident yet? Did someone not break a policewoman's nose? What really has gone on there? Are the police at risk of giving in to the mob? We're also going to be talking about Nigel Farage, or a version of anyway, getting milkshaked yet again by the tolerant left. Tune in to find out.
It's going to be extremely interesting, and it is important that the police can uphold law and order. That's all coming up after the weather. I will be back on Monday at 8 o'clock. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg. This has been State of the Nation, and you want the latest weather report from Somerset. I understand it will be absolutely splendid tomorrow. No rain in sight, glorious sunshine, ideal day for going to Weston-super-Mare.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. There's likely to be something a bit drier and warmer early next week, but before then, plenty of showers. And actually, through the end of today, there is still some more persistent rain affecting some parts of the southeast due to a waving frontal system that's already brought quite a bit of rain. That rain in the far southeast should clear through as we go through the next few hours, though. And so for many, it is going to be a largely dry night, just a scattering of showers continuing across western parts of Scotland in particular, also parts of Northern Ireland and northwest England. Many places, though, having some clear skies, and it may be a touch fresher than last night towards the northwest, still quite warm and muggy towards the southeast. And as we go through tomorrow morning, then a bright start for many. Maybe the odd pocket of mist and fog around, but I think on the whole it's largely dry. A few showers already pushing into parts of western England and Wales, but further east a drier story. A few showers also for western parts of Northern Ireland, but it's down the western side of Scotland where the showers are going to be most frequent, and there could already be some heavy ones as we go through the morning. Eastern parts of Scotland clinging on to some fine sunny weather through a large chunk of the morning, but as we head towards the afternoon, those showers are going to become a bit more widespread. Some of them could be on the heavy side, and there could be the odd rumble of thunder mixed in, albeit they don't look as intense as the showers that we saw yesterday. Plenty of showers for Northern Ireland. Parts of western England and Wales may see a few showers, staying dry towards the east, and a decent amount of sunshine, and with that feeling pretty warm again, temperatures in the mid-20s for some. Looking ahead to Saturday, and after a mostly fine start for many of us, we are going to see the showers developing yet again. Slight differences in where we're most likely to see the showers. Probably Northern England, North Wales could see the heaviest showers on Saturday, and they could be quite slow moving because the winds will be dropping out a little bit. But Sunday into Monday looks drier and warmer. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick.